Mr. Patel, does Donald Trump appear anywhere in the Epstein files?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
It's not a complicated question. Does Donald Trump appear anywhere in the Epstein files?
I didn't say it was a complicated question. I just didn't hear you, so my apologies. We have released where President Trump's name's in the Epstein files and everybody else, and all credible information that we are legally allowed to release has been released.
All right, so let's go through that. You're referring to court orders that prohibit you from releasing grand jury testimony under Rule 6E. Is that what you're referring to when you say as the law allows?
That's a piece of it.
Really? What other evidence do those 3 court orders you cited prohibit from being released?
Information that was collected pursuant to those search warrants that were limited in fashion.
Wrong. That's not what the court order says, and that's not under 6E.
And you're talking, and I said that's 6E, and I said there was others, and I'm answering that. There are sealed court order documents. There are protective orders.
They are unsealed as part of discovery given to Ghislaine Maxwell. They are no longer sealed.
That's just not true. We can argue about it all you want.
Okay, well, you agree that there are. So your testimony here is that the reason why you are not releasing all of the videos that you have acknowledged, there are so many, and that the FBI spent thousands of hours of reviewing, the photographs, the photographs that you have. You're saying that you're not releasing those because there's a court order requiring them to be sealed? Is that your testimony?
Never said that about the videos. On the totality of the videos, of the thousands of images that were seized pursuant to the search warrants executed at the time.
All right, so let me ask you something. When was the last time a federal judge literally sanctioned someone for lying to a court? Like, not just a slap on the wrist, but an actual sanction? Because that just happened to Kash Patel. Yeah, the FBI director, the guy Trump personally handpicked to run the most powerful law enforcement agency in the country. And here's the kicker. It's about Jeffrey Epstein. Now I know what you're thinking. Oh great, another Epstein story. But hold on, because this one is different. This isn't some conspiracy theory floating around on the internet. This is a federal judge, Judge Richard Berman, coming out and saying Kash Patel straight up misled the court, lied, concealed evidence, called him out in official court documents. Can you believe this? But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video. So here's what happened. Patel goes in front of Congress back in September, right? House Judiciary Committee. And he's sitting there with this, this confident look on his face, telling lawmakers that he wants to release the Epstein files. He really does. But oh no. There are these pesky court orders stopping him, legal restrictions. His hands are tied. He's releasing as much as legally allowed. Sounds reasonable, right? Except it's complete garbage. Judge Berman looked at Patel's claims and basically said, yeah, no, that's not true. The judge wrote, and I'm paraphrasing here but not by much, that the government, meaning the FBI and the Trump administration, has full authority to release these files. There are no court orders blocking them. None. Zero. Zilch. So Patel was lying to Congress, to the American people. And now a federal judge has sanctioned him for it. Like, this is wild. And here's where it gets even crazier. Remember when Patel made this big show earlier this year about releasing Epstein documents? 33,000 pages. Sounds impressive, right? The Trump administration was all over the news talking about transparency, draining the swamp, exposing the elites. Except, guess how many of those pages were actually new information? 3%. Yeah, 3%. 97% of what Patel released was already public. Stuff we already knew. Old news. The critical stuff, the financial records showing over $1.5 billion in flagged transactions tied to Epstein's network, mysteriously missing. Come on. So what we have here is a situation where the FBI director, handpicked by Trump, is actively concealing evidence about one of the most notorious criminals in modern history, a guy who trafficked minors, a guy with connections to politicians, billionaires, royalty. And the one person who's supposed to be bringing transparency and accountability is instead playing games with a federal court. And Democrats are furious. Republicans, at least the ones who actually care about transparency, are furious. Repair Dan Goldman literally accused Patel to his face during the hearing. He said, "You are concealing Epstein files. You're part of the cover-up." Now, you might be wondering why this matters right now. Like, Epstein's been dead since 2019. Why are we still talking about this? Because it's not just about Epstein anymore. It's about what those files contain. It's about who's in those files. And it's about an administration that campaigned on draining the swamp and exposing corruption. But when push comes to shove, they're the ones hiding the evidence. Think about it. If there's nothing to hide, why lie to a federal judge? If the files don't implicate anyone important, why refuse to release them? If transparency is really the goal, why release 97% garbage and hold back the financial records? And this is happening right now, like today, October 2025. We're a year away from the 2026 midterms. Trump's second term is in full swing, and his FBI director just got sanctioned by a federal court for covering up evidence. This isn't some abstract political scandal. This is the guy in charge of federal law enforcement actively obstructing justice, and the court just called him out on it. So yeah, we need to talk about this. Because if Kash Patel can lie to Congress, lie to a federal judge, and still keep his job, what does that say about accountability in this administration? What does that say about the system? And more importantly, what's actually in those files that's worth lying about? Because something doesn't add up here. Trump spent years talking about exposing the deep state, about bringing sunlight to the darkest corners of Washington. And now, when he actually has the power to do it, when he controls the FBI and can release these files whenever he wants, suddenly there are all these excuses, court orders that don't exist, legal restrictions that aren't real, privacy concerns that somehow only apply to the most powerful people on earth. It's almost like, and I'm just saying, maybe the swamp is a lot closer to home than Trump wants to admit. Stick with me because this gets so much deeper than you think. Okay, so let's rewind a bit and talk about who Kash Patel actually is. Because if you don't understand his relationship with Trump, you won't understand why this scandal is so significant. Kash Patel is not your typical FBI director. Most FBI directors, they come from law enforcement backgrounds, career prosecutors, former judges, people with decades of experience in federal investigations. Patel, he's a Trump loyalist. That's his main qualification. He worked on Devin Nunes' staff during the first Trump impeachment. He was one of the main guys pushing back against the Russia investigation. He wrote memos trying to discredit the FBI's own probe into Trump's orbit, and Trump loved him for it. So when Trump won in 2024 and came back for his second term, he put Patel in charge of the FBI, and a lot of people warned this was a bad idea because Patel's loyalty isn't to the institution, it's to Trump personally. And now, here we are. So let's talk about what actually happened with these Epstein files, because the timeline is important. Back in early 2025, there was massive public pressure to release everything the FBI had on Epstein. Democrats wanted it, some Republicans wanted it, conspiracy theorists wanted it, victims advocates wanted it. Everyone basically wanted to know the full extent of Epstein's network. And Trump, being Trump, saw an opportunity. He goes on Truth Social and posts something like, "We're releasing everything, total transparency. The elites don't want you to see this, but we're going to expose them all." Big talk, right? So in March 2025, Patel announces they're releasing 33,000 pages of Epstein-related documents, press conference, media coverage, the works. And for about 5 minutes, it looked like maybe, just maybe, we were actually going to get some answers. But then people started going through the documents, and pretty quickly, it became clear that most of it was junk. Court filings we'd already seen, depositions that had been public for years, redacted witness statements that told us basically nothing new. One YouTuber, Anna Simon, she went through the whole thing and calculated that 97% was recycled material. Only 3% was genuinely new. And even that 3%, heavily redacted. Names blacked out, financial details missing. Like, come on. The really important stuff, the financial records showing how Epstein moved money, who he paid, where the cash went, none of that was included. And we're talking about over $1.5 billion in flagged transactions, money that went through Epstein's accounts and was flagged by financial institutions as suspicious. That's the stuff people actually care about, because that's where you find the names. That's where you connect the dots. And Patel's explanation? Court orders prevent us from releasing more, which again was a lie. So fast forward to September, Patel gets called in front of the House Judiciary Committee. Both Democrats and some Republicans want answers. Why did you only release 3% new material? Where are the financial records? Why are you hiding evidence? And Patel sits there and gives this whole speech about how he wishes he could release more. He really does, but his hands are tied. There are legal restrictions, court orders, privacy concerns. He's doing everything he can within the bounds of the law. Rep. Dan Goldman wasn't having it. He straight up calls Patel out. "You are concealing Epstein files. You're part of the cover-up." And the room just erupted. Republicans trying to defend Patel, Democrats demanding answers. It was chaos. But here's the thing Goldman pointed out. He said, "You claim court orders prevent disclosure, but you won't tell us which court orders. You won't cite specific cases. You won't provide any documentation backing up your claims because there aren't any." Judge Richard Berman, The same judge who presided over some of the original Epstein cases, he reviewed Patel's statements, and he was not impressed. In his ruling, Berman wrote that the government is the logical party to make comprehensive disclosure to the public of the Epstein files. In other words, there's nothing stopping you, Kash. Release them. And then Berman went further. He sanctioned Patel, which is a big deal. Judges don't just sanction people for fun. They do it when someone has actively misled the court or obstructed justice. So now we have an FBI director who's been officially sanctioned by a federal judge for lying about why he won't release evidence in one of the biggest criminal cases of the century. Can you believe this? And here's what makes it even more suspicious. Throughout all of this, Patel keeps saying there's no evidence implicating anyone else. He told Congress, "We've reviewed everything, and there's no credible information suggesting others were involved in Epstein's crimes." Really? No one else was involved? A guy who had private jets, multiple properties, connections to presidents and princes, and he was acting completely alone? Yeah, right. Victims have been saying for years there were other powerful people involved. Flight logs show dozens of high-profile names. Witness statements mention parties, gatherings, introductions, but according to Patel, nothing to see here. It's almost like, and I'm just speculating here, maybe those files contain names that would be politically inconvenient to release. Maybe there are people in Trump's orbit, or people Trump wants to protect, whose names show up in those financial records, because why else would you lie to a federal judge about it? And look, I'm not saying Trump himself is implicated. I don't know. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But the fact that his hand-picked FBI director is actively concealing evidence and lying about legal restrictions, that raises questions. Big questions. Think about the optics here for a second. Trump spent his entire political career positioning himself as the outsider, the guy who was going to take on the establishment, drain the swamp, expose the corrupt elites who've been running things for decades. And Epstein was the ultimate symbol of elite corruption, a billionaire with connections everywhere, who literally got away with trafficking minors for years because he was too connected, too powerful, too protected. So when Trump came back into office, releasing the Epstein files should have been priority number one, right? This was his chance to prove everything he'd been saying, to show the American people exactly how deep the corruption goes. Instead, we get this: a partial release of mostly public documents, an FBI director lying about legal restrictions, a federal judge calling out the deception. It's the opposite of draining the swamp. It's protecting the swamp. So what happens now? Well, Judge Berman's ruling puts pressure on Patel and the Trump administration to actually release the files. The court has basically said, you have no excuse, do it. But will they? That's the real question. Because if they ignore a federal judge's order, that's a whole new level of obstruction. And meanwhile, we're heading into 2026, midterm elections. Democrats are already using this as ammunition. See, they campaign on transparency, but they're covering up evidence. Republicans are split. Some are defending Patel. Others are quietly uncomfortable with the whole situation. This is a mess, and it's only going to get messier. All right, so let's break this down into what actually matters, because there's a lot of noise around this story, and I want to cut through it. Point 1. Kash Patel lied to Congress and to a federal court. That's not an opinion. That's what Judge Berman's ruling says. Patel claimed court orders prevented him from releasing Epstein files. The judge said that's false. There are no such orders. The FBI and Trump administration have full authority to release everything. So why did Patel lie? Was he hiding? Point 2. The documents Patel did release were mostly useless. 97% of the 33,000 pages were already public. The 3% that was new, heavily redacted. And the most important stuff, the financial records showing $1.5 billion in suspicious transactions, completely missing. Those financial records are the key, because that's where you find out who Epstein was paying, who was paying him, and where the money went. That's how you connect the dots. And Patel is refusing to release them. Point 3. This isn't just about Epstein anymore. It's about accountability. Trump ran on draining the swamp, exposing corruption, bringing transparency to Washington. And yet his FBI director is actively concealing evidence in one of the most high-profile criminal cases in recent history. Like, how does that make sense? If you truly believe in transparency, you release the files, all of them. You don't play games with redactions and phony legal excuses. You don't lie to Congress. You don't mislead federal judges. But that's exactly what Patel is doing. And point 4, this has massive political implications heading into the midterms. Democrats are going to hammer this. Trump said he'd drain the swamp, but he's protecting the swamp. Republicans are going to have to defend Patel or distance themselves from him. Either way, it's a lose-lose situation. Because even if you're a Trump supporter, how do you defend this? How do you explain away an FBI director getting sanctioned by a federal judge for lying about evidence? You can't. Now, let's talk about why this matters beyond just politics. Because there are real victims here, people whose lives were destroyed by Epstein, and they deserve answers. They deserve to know who else was involved, who enabled this, Who covered it up? And instead of getting answers, they're watching the FBI director play legal games and hide evidence. It's disgusting. And here's the thing that really gets me. The Trump administration had an opportunity here. They could have been the ones to finally expose everything. They could have released every document, every financial record, every name. They could have been the heroes of this story, but they chose not to. They chose to protect whoever's in those files, and that tells you everything you need to know. So what happens next? Well, a few possibilities. One, the Trump administration could actually comply with Judge Berman's ruling and release the full files. That would be the right thing to do, but I'm not holding my breath. Two, they could continue to stall and obstruct, ignore the judge's order, claim new legal reasons why they can't release the documents, drag this out until after the midterms, and hope people forget about it. Or three, and this is the nuclear option, Congress could subpoena the documents, force the issue, and if Patel refuses to comply, hold him in contempt. That would be wild. An FBI director held in contempt of Congress for refusing to release evidence about Jeffrey Epstein. Can you imagine the headlines? But here's what I think is really going on. I think those files contain names that would blow up Washington, not just Democrats, not just Republicans, both sides, powerful people on both sides of the aisle who are connected to Epstein in some way, and neither party really wants that to come out, because once you open that door, you can't close it. The whole house of cards comes tumbling down. So Patel is playing his role, taking the heat, getting sanctioned by a judge, but protecting the people who really matter, and we're just supposed to accept it. Yeah, I don't think so. Look, I don't know what's in those files. Nobody does, except the people who've seen them. But the fact that Patel is willing to lie to a federal judge to keep them hidden, that tells me there's something big in there, something that would change the conversation completely. And we deserve to know what it is. The victims deserve to know. The American people deserve to know. And no amount of legal games or political spin should prevent that. Let me give you some context here about why the financial records are so critical. Because a lot of people don't understand why everyone keeps focusing on the money trail. When prosecutors go after powerful people, especially in cases involving organized crime or corruption, they follow the money, always. Because you can deny meetings, you can claim you barely knew someone, you can say it was just a coincidence you were at the same party. But financial transactions, those leave a paper trail. Bank records don't lie. Wire transfers show exactly who paid who, when, and how much. So when we're talking about $1.5 billion in flagged transactions, that's not just pocket change. That's serious money moving through Epstein's accounts. And financial institutions flagged it as suspicious. That means banks who see billions of dollars move every day thought something about these transactions was off. Who is he paying? Why? What were the payments for? Those are the questions the financial records would answer. And those are exactly the records Patel won't release. Convenient, right? And here's another thing that bothers me. Throughout this whole saga, Patel keeps insisting there's no evidence of a broader conspiracy, no evidence that other powerful people were involved in Epstein's crimes. But how will we know? How can the American people verify that claim if we can't see the evidence? It's like someone saying, trust me, I looked at all the files and there's nothing there. Okay, but show us the files then. Let us see for ourselves. If there's truly nothing incriminating, releasing everything should be easy. The fact that Patel is fighting so hard to keep these documents hidden, that tells a different story. And you know what else is suspicious? The timing. Patel made his big announcement about releasing documents in March, right when there was maximum pressure to do something. Then he releases this massive dump of mostly useless material, and by the time people figured out it was 97% recycled content, the news cycle had moved on. That's a classic political move. Make a big show of transparency, release a bunch of documents, let the media cover it as if you actually did something. And by the time the truth comes out, everyone's already talking about something else. Except this time, a federal judge called him out on it. So here's where we are. An FBI director sanctioned for lying, a Trump administration that promised transparency but is delivering cover-ups, and a scandal that's only going to grow bigger as we head into the midterms. This story isn't over, not by a long shot, and when those files finally come out, and they will come out eventually, it's going to be explosive. Because here's the thing, the longer this drags on, the more suspicious it looks. Every day that passes without releasing those files is another day people start wondering what's being hidden. Every excuse Patel makes just raises more questions. And Trump has to be thinking about this too, because this isn't a good look for him. He built his entire brand on being the anti-establishment guy, the truth teller, the one who would finally expose the corrupt elites. And now his FBI director is protecting those exact same elites. That's not draining the swamp. So keep watching, keep demanding answers, and don't let them memory hold this, because if we let them get away with this, what else are they hiding? Think about all the promises we heard, all the talk about transparency and accountability, all the rhetoric about exposing the truth. And then when it actually comes time to do it, when there's a real opportunity to expose genuine corruption, suddenly it's all excuses and legal technicalities. That should tell you everything. All right, that's it for today. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you believe Patel? Do you think there's a cover-up? And who do you think is being protected? Drop your thoughts below, because this conversation is just getting started. And trust me, there's a lot more to uncover here. I'll see you in the next one. Stay vigilant.